A meme is a totality. It is the sum of all encoded experiences in the form of language. At first, in its primitive stage, in the form of stories, mythologies, symbolic verbal traditions passed on from elder to the younger. Later, with the advent of the written word, these experiences are passed on in the form of the written text, which is no more than an encoding of these experiences using the symbolic, artistic method of language. But the same can be said about genes. Genes are the sum total of all previous nurturing passed on to the later generations in the form of biochemical codes, genomes, which we are now told passes on the experiences of the parent up until the moment of conception, passes on these experiences to the fetus. From the gene, the meme evolves as a natural progression. A meme is an organic effect. It is the byproduct of a people interacting with the environment, then passed on even to those that have never experienced that environment, and those who do not share in the same genetic past. Herein lies the power of the meme. In effect, it infects the mind, just as a gene fertilizes the body. A meme is essentially the combination of social norms, mores, ideals, mythologies, attitudes produced by the aforementioned interaction between a population and a specific environment. And because the meme can fertilize the mind, it does not require proximity. It can do so across time and space. One can put down a text encompassing the shared values of a people and have it influence generations of people living thousands of years afterwards in regions dissimilar to the original environment that birthed these values and principles and attitudes. All memes begin organically from the bottom up. All that is except a particular type of meme, a nihilistic meme. The last begins as an antithesis to the previous, a rejection of nature, a rejection of environment and genetics. This type starts as an idea propagated amongst the downtrodden, the wronged, the ill, the disillusioned, the inferior, the stupid. It finds ample willing subjects across tribal and national boundaries, as weakness is a factor in all human conditions under all forms of natural conditioning. It was because the weak were permitted to reproduce, were sheltered from culling, were fed ideas uh, that proposed the concept that they deserved, that they had in fact a right to this life, which laid down the conditions for the propagation of nihilistic memes. This is like when a forest is protected from fire over a long period of time. Fire which is supposed to cleanse it of dead trees and debris and of the underbrush that accumulates over time. And this accumulation of matter that it becomes ready for a spark that may burn the entire forest down. And so it was the protection of weakness, its necessity for the emergence of civilizations, the fact that it was offered rights and privileges, and the illusion of them, which laid down the groundwork for the destructive flames of nihilism. In modern times, there is a particular form of nihilism which spread like wildfire amongst Rome's underbelly, infecting Rome's slaves, its females, its children. This after it had evolved in the Middle East amongst numerous tribes building momentum up until it came into contact with the openness, the childish mirth of the Greeks. From this contact, it mutated, or segments of it did, anyways. Parts remained exclusionary, closed off, while others shed the shyness and became more universal, more cosmopolitan. With Platonism, the infection found a foundation that would make it viral across tribal and national boundaries, across temporal and spatial distances. It was not long before it morphed again, this time turning secular by giving up the containing element of a god. It became Marxism, and from there it turned humanist, with the offshoots of feminism and egalitarianism and liberalism. We are living in a world after the aftermath of two competing strands of nihilism. One more exclusionary, trying to turn itself from a meme into a gene, and the other wanting to preserve its ethereal nature as an all-encompassing ideology that does away with all natural categories such as sex and race, but also all religious categories. In fact, does away with all elements which prohibit its expansion and leads to internal strife. The goal here is internal harmony, internal uniformity. In all of this, the loss of spirituality beyond the superstitious and the monist surrendered to invisible authorities, or to ideas with no reference to anything aesthetic or perceptible, has made humanity bland, dull, disinterested, and unengaged. A humanity that now requires medication, a numbing, and the usage of fear to control it. A worldly numbness, in fact, permeates the actions of man, and all seek refuge in materialism, or impotent hedonism, or in self-denial and guilt, dreaming of a more real reality, and a world better than this one. This so-called war on terror is a mimetic war. It is one of leveling. The nihilistic meme now dominating the West by dominating the cathedral of the West, the American Empire, is eradicating all resistance to its void, offering a liberation from the world or from anything natural, offering a culture of no culture. By doing so, it eliminates all resistance to its dominion, casting minds into the winds with no anchoring in the past and no direction. The mind is so desperate for an identification, for a value, for a standard of determining itself and its self-worth, for an ideal to strive towards. And by striving towards it, to acquire a direction, to focus its will upon. It is so desperate, I say, that it grabs onto the first thing offered by the very system that eliminates these foundations. It is now totally immersed in modernity, in Americanism, in this pseudo-individuality of a mindset convinced that product choice is the very definition of liberty, and that sex is a matter of choice, and that race is no more than a skin tone. The idea that a baby is born void of all predetermining natural inclinations, shaping its presence and delineating its potentials, offers a relief from a natural selection process that leaves most dissatisfied with the outcome. The idea that man invents himself anew with every birth is part of the shared lies, the shared modern mythologies, the bullshit individuality that separates it from all past and so makes it vulnerable to all immediacy. The mind now exists totally in the present. It is taught to value living in the present, unconcerned about the future, unaffected by the past or dismissive of it, claiming that it is free from it, calling it unwanted baggage. Like an animal, it lives totally within a contained perceptual event horizon. Why did the Eastern civilization never develop the technologies of the West? Why did they fall back slowly over time? Why did they not exhibit this desire to explore, to colonize, to expand, this masculine need to dominate? The answer, in my opinion, can be found in demographics. It was the population pressures which made the propagation of memes, of ideas and ideals which placate, indoctrinate, enslave, castrate, emasculate the mind, that eventually resulted in a passive populace, ashamed of ego, and immersed in this extreme form of asceticism, desperate to avoid conflict and confrontations. This demographic pressure came later in the West due to historical circumstances and due to the discovery of open frontiers westward, slowing down the process. Yet when the effete emasculating memes were introduced into the body politic of the West, it was during times of population pressure and resource deficiency. These nihilistic ideas had been around for centuries. That they took hold where they did at the time period that they did was not coincidental. It also marked the beginning of the end for European paganism and the decline of the noble spirit, the decline of Western civilization, in fact, as Spengler also described it. Polytheism made way for the domineering authoritarianism of monism, stifling the human spirit further. Men were made to feel subjugated to a divine father figure, forever under his shadow, only hoping to die just to sit next to him. The culprit here, besides demographics, is the absence of accessible frontiers. This forces a change in attitudes which would help in harmonizing divergent, often conflicting cultural elements, mimetic traditions, into stable unities. To accomplish this harmonization, the lowest common denominator is sought after and then made into a unifying identifier. This identifying concept is the species identifier, the sexual identifier, which is then defined as superficial in all other contexts. So it is accepted as a species identifier, but then when it is used as an identifier to separate men from women or to distinguish them, it is taught as being superficial, void of substance. Therefore, the latest war, the so-called Cold War, was for me an internal strife, a conflict between two branches of the same, all leveling, anti-natural, anti-world, anti-reality meme. This after it had gained victory over the last vestiges of European paganism during World War II. It had to consolidate its power, and the different elements that participated within its framework, had to compete over which one will then become uh, the dominant strand of the same nihilistic meme. We all know what the outcome is. But because nihilism requires something to nullify, the absence of an organic element has left it struggling to find a new enemy to subjugate, to level down. And this new enemy, of course, can be found in the East. Not in China so much, because some of the same components have already leveled down that culture and have produced billions of sheepish, emasculated males. But more so in the more traditional, more masculine Islamic meme, which is itself an offshoot of Judaism. Judaism splintered off into two branches: Christianity in the West and Islam in the East. Christianity gained more power by, like I said before, by coming into contact with Hellenism, becoming viral by merging with elements of Hellenism, more specifically Platonic thought, which made it viral, made it more cosmopolitan, more all-inclusive. Parts of this splintered off into Marxism,